So I'm going to call the meeting to order in spite of the fact that I was the first one sitting and I'm the one being criticized for holding the meeting up. I do want to open with a couple of comments about our weekend festivities. Some great events this weekend, including Festival du Bois, our trademark francophone festival for our francophone community of Mayerville. Il y avait beaucoup de gens qui ont eu beaucoup de plaisir. A lot of people had a lot of fun this weekend, beautiful sunny weather, and I want to thank Council for that resolution that Festival du Bois have sun for the first time in their memorable history. Thanks to all the volunteers, all the organizers and sponsors. Absolutely great festival. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Our first item this evening is minutes of the public hearing held on Monday, February 23rd. Recommendation to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Hodge. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 is minutes of the regular council meeting, also held on February 23rd. Recommendation to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Marsden. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 3 is minutes of the Tri-Cities Homelessness and Housing Task Group meeting of Friday, February 6th. Recommendation to receive.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Towner and seconded by Councillor Asmussen. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is fourth and final reading of City of Coquitlam Highway Dedication Cancellation Bylaw 4543. The two-part staff recommendations that Council rescind the fourth and final reading given to this bylaw that was granted at the last meeting, February 23rd, that Council give fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam Highway Dedication Cancellation Bylaw number 4543.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, seconded by Councillor O'Neill. All in favour? All opposed? Carried unanimously, and much better done than last time.
Thank you. The next item, item 5, is the verbal report of the Mayor, and it concerns the 2015 to 2019 financial plan.
Good evening. Our tradition in Coquitlam is an address by the Mayor on behalf of Council about the city's budget when we introduce, for first reading, Bylaw 4545, which is the budget for 2015. There is no responsibility more important for our Council than diligently managing the public purse, a responsibility that each of us takes seriously. The overall economic and financial climate remains steady this year, but we can't take that for granted. This Council has embraced fiscal discipline and will continue to do so. We have achieved a great deal in recent years. The City has increased the reserve funds on hand to replace infrastructure while reducing taxpayer-supported debt. The past 5 years have seen smaller and smaller property tax increases, and this year's is smaller still. This is the first budget for our two newest councillors who joined us after November's election, Councillor Dennis Morrison and Councillor Terry Towner. Both have a long history of contributions to our city, and in just a short time, they have already made strong contributions to Council. As this is their first city budget from this side of the table, I'd like to welcome them one final time to Council. Councillor Marsden brings 30 years of finance, banking, human resources, and business operational experience to our Council. His ability to ask the provocative question and work toward consensus will serve us well in the coming term. Councillor Towner has a business degree from SFU and worked many years as a manager and analyst in human resources for a large BC utility, where she worked with budgets, forecasting, personnel planning, etc. She prides herself in always striving for efficiency and value-added improvements. As a Council, we must work together to develop a big picture for our city, and both Dennis and Terry have demonstrated in their short tenure so far a willingness and ability to engage in these conversations. Normally, this Council passes its budget in December, which gives Coquitlam a strong advantage in being first out of the gate in signing contracts for large capital projects. But while that schedule is really good for taxpayers, it can create challenges in an election year. Both Brent and I remember our first budget. The election was on Saturday in 2005, and 2 full budget meetings began 36 hours later on Monday morning. The 4 newly elected councillors that year hadn't even picked up our election signs yet before we were voting on the 2006 budget. That process isn't fair to incoming council members or to the public who elect us. So this year, because of the November 2014 election, we still passed the capital budgets last fall to ensure the best contract prices, but we opted to delay the full implementation on the operations side of the budget until February to allow our 2 new councillors to participate fully, and both of them did. We even added an extra full day to budget deliberations this year, and we used all of it. And of course, I'd like to acknowledge the work of my other 6 council colleagues, Councillors Brent Asmundson, Craig Hodge, Terry O'Neill, May Reid, Chris Wilson, and Bonita Zerillo. Each of them brings different skills and experience to this table, and I thank them for that. Our individual perspectives make us stronger as a whole. We are a council that comes to the table with a wide variety of political views and perspectives, but we are steadfast in our belief that by working together and building consensus, we can achieve the best for the people of Coquitlam. Preparing a municipal budget is a delicate balance. On the one hand, we hear our residents and the business community when they say their finances are increasingly stretched as the cost of living in the Lower Mainland continues to rise. But we also hear that same community saying that they depend on the services provided by their city, especially around priorities such as transportation, public safety, and parks. There is a high demand for new and improved services, as well as the continued cost to maintain the ones we depend on every day. Add to this balance, the increasing demands and responsibilities of municipal governments. Many of these increasing demands and responsibilities are rising faster than the rate of inflation. Some of these are brand new responsibilities, pieces that used to wholly belong to other levels of government, now sit squarely on our shoulders at the burden of local taxpayers. And some of these are new interfaces, pieces that still rest with other levels of government, but in which we are now involved. We can't continue to do more with less, but we can work to ensure that we manage what we do as diligently as possible, and that we continue to grow other means of revenue outside of the property tax base, including development cost charges, investments, and reserves and grants. As a result of all that effort, that refinement, and the deliberation, we've succeeded once again for the 6th year in a row in reducing the property tax increase. This year's property tax increase of 2.34% is the lowest since 2005, marking the 6th year in a row of declining increases. The investments in this budget amount to an increase of about $48 for the average property owner this year. When added with utility cost increases, it's a total increase of $73 for the average household. For a number of years, Coquitlam has been shifting the commercial property tax burden in recognition of the fact that our commercial tax rates have historically been relatively high in comparison to other municipalities. After this year's shift, the residential property tax rate will be 2.71%, while the business rate will be 1.71%. Through this small adjustment every year, we're helping to support business in our community, which also helps to keep Coquitlam competitive in attracting jobs so that our residents can live and work in the same community, and businesses do pay taxes. And the results are gratifying. In December 2014, BC Business Magazine ranked Coquitlam number 3 out of 36 in their list of the best cities for work in BC. Looking at economic factors such as labour participation, population growth, and income growth, Coquitlam is 3rd overall in the province. We want every Coquitlam enterprise to thrive, and we will continue to improve conditions for business in our city. How did we arrive at today's budget? It takes months of work by council and staff and goes back to a very solid business planning process. The business plan is based on clearly defined criteria, including our strategic goals, council priorities, public priorities and input, initiatives currently underway and budgeted, and externally driven initiatives. The result is a set of priorities to be accomplished. And at the same time, we are continuously reviewing our processes to remove projects and processes that are no longer required, which also frees up funds and resources. Through organizational reviews, our staff committee on business improvements and customer service, as well as our stop doing list, we are constantly managing our resources and striving for efficiencies to meet the changing demands of our stakeholders. And our budget is also shaped by solid feedback from the public. Some of that feedback is informal through conversations, email, and phone calls, while some comes from formal feedback through participation in our Ipsos Reid Citizen Satisfaction Survey, our recent online citizen budget process, and our annual town hall meetings. The resounding feedback is that you enjoy a high quality of life, Coquitlam is consistently providing excellent service, and you want us to continue due diligence and to look for ongoing efficiencies and improvements. So what should you, the taxpayer, expect to see in 2015? The budget is large and complex, but I'd like to highlight a few initiatives that can be divided into 6 key areas: public safety, planning for our growing communities, Burke Mountain, transportation and infrastructure, parks, recreation and culture, and business. We'll begin with public safety, by far the largest area of new spending in 2015. It's 50% of our new spending. Additions this year include 6 new members to the Coquitlam RCMP. These members will support a Coquitlam-specific team designed to enhance community safety by boosting patrol and police response resources in crime hotspots and during high call volume. Coquitlam has achieved a low crime rate. We are consistently ranked as one of the top 10 safest communities in BC, but we want to maintain that good record even as our population grows. As one of the fastest growing municipalities in BC, we are planning for our growing community. This includes formal planning processes such as the Burquitlam Lougheed Neighbourhood Plan and the Northwest Burke Vision. We are planning for the Evergreen Line and all that will come with it in 2016, including new development, parking, public art, enhanced public spaces, and improving the corridors around the SkyTrain line, such as Pine Tree Way, North Road, and Clark Road. And we'll also be planning to help ensure that as our community evolves, we are not forgetting about those who may be more vulnerable. This includes the housing affordability strategy, on which we'll be seeking public input this spring, as well as the next steps for Riverview lands and the opening of our new homeless shelter. On the Riverview lands, this Council has remained steadfast that our vision for Riverview includes preservation of the lands as well as a mental health component. I have spoken at great length about this, as has all of Council. While this is a deeply personal issue for our family, it's also the right thing to do for our community. We've recently seen some mental health services re-established in Hillside and Brookside at Riverview, and we remain committed to advancing our vision with the provincial government as they continue their visioning process this year. As we plan for our growing community, without a doubt, this will include a focus on Burke Mountain. Approximately 1/4 of residents new to Coquitlam in the next 30 years will be moving into this area. So in addition to the Northwest Burke Vision, which will outline the vision for future development, you will continue to see significant investments this year and in coming years. This includes infrastructure such as the widening of Coast Meridian Road and the extension of David Avenue. This year, we'll be presenting the plan for Partington Creek Village, the future retail and community hub for Burke Mountain, and we continue to ensure that all the required municipal services are in place to serve this new community. But I said municipal services. We all know that there are still 2 big pieces missing for residents: schools and transit. While these fall outside of the city's direct area of responsibility, we will continue to do what we can and all that we can to help move these 2 issues forward for the residents of Burke Mountain. Transportation and infrastructure. Consistently, one of the top priorities for residents is transportation. We want to get you home to your families faster at the end of the day in whatever mode of transport you choose. We also want to ensure that we are properly maintaining our roadways to keep you safe, to ease wear and tear on your vehicles. More than $84 million will be spent on transportation over the next 5 years through our capital expenditure program. This includes pieces I've already touched on, such as the Evergreen Line corridors and Coast Meridian. But it also includes $32 million in important road rehabilitation. Pedestrian safety is something that I and the rest of Council feel very strongly about. And one of the best and most enduring ways that a city can ensure pedestrian safety is through improved engineering. As such, 2015 will see continued investment in the school walkability and bikeability programs, to the extent that bikeability is a word, focusing this year on middle schools. And while not formally part of our budget discussions tonight, I'd be remiss if I didn't highlight the upcoming transit referendum. Eligible voters will have a chance this spring to decide if they support a 0.5% increase to the provincial sales tax in order to support $250 million a year in necessary transit and transportation investments, including investments that Coquitlam desperately needs. And I mention it tonight because I want to encourage Coquitlam residents to get informed on their decision and to consider how their vote may impact future transportation, congestion, and even future budgets, as a no vote would require additional municipal spending in expanding and upgrading our road network, building more parking, and other considerations. Parks, Recreation and Culture is another area that will see substantial investment. Many of you came out last year and provided us your input on the Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan. We thank you for that input. The important document will guide our work going forward and will help ensure that we keep and grow the spaces that contribute to an important quality of life for our residents. $500,000 will be provided to facility capital maintenance to take care of facilities that exist in our community, because we have to take good care of what we already have in order to ensure that it lasts as long as we need it to. In addition to that, another $500,000 will be included to support enhancements identified in the master planning process, because we hear you when you say there are still things that you'd like to see in your community. This will include improvements to Rochester, Lee and Victoria Parks, new turf at Charles Best, and a spray pad upgrade to Blue Mountain Park. We're also considering a new festival and performance site at Town Centre Park, and I thank everyone who provided their input on our recent consultation for this. And in 2015, we'll be starting to plan for a new recreation facility in Coquitlam in partnership with the YMCA of Greater Vancouver. Using an innovative partnership model as well as development funding from community amenity contributions by developers, we're moving forward with an expansive new recreation facility benefiting both Coquitlam and the broader community. This project will be funded, both capital funds and future operational funds, from outside of the property tax base. I'd also like to highlight $218,000 to the Coquitlam Public Library, a beloved local asset, to help them replace and upgrade outdated technology. Today's library goes well beyond traditional paper book borrowing, and we must ensure that they have the tools necessary to provide the services required. And finally, our business community. We want to continue to be one of the best cities to work in BC. We want to help you create new jobs for our residents. One initiative this year will be the creation of an Economic Development Advisory Committee. We will also continue to invest in our tourism program to bring people to Coquitlam to shop in our stores, eat in our restaurants, and experience all that we have to offer. And we remain committed to the annual tax shift to help make it more cost-effective for you to do business in Coquitlam. Looking ahead, 2015 is going to be a busy year, a year of advances, but also a year of preparations. And it's all leading to 2016, which will be an exciting year of change. In 2016, we'll be host to the BC 55+ Games. We will celebrate our 125th anniversary, and the Evergreen Line will open, all within the span of a few months. Make no mistake, it's an exciting time to be in Coquitlam. I said 5 years ago in 2010, and in this speech actually, that this decade belongs to Coquitlam. We're approaching the halfway point of this decade, and there is an energy and excitement in our community. But within that, we are still a community where you know your neighbor, and you help your neighbor, as evidenced by the number of people who contacted us wanting to help the residents affected by the recent fire on Glen Drive, for example. I want to take a moment to acknowledge those in our community who showed how much Coquitlam cares, who stepped up when other residents were struggling. Thank you all. We have heard from you that you want us to be accountable, but we've also heard that you depend on us for services, for infrastructure and amenities. Tonight's budget strikes that delicate balance. In fact, if we remove the two largest areas of spending, the new police officers and the parks and facilities spending, this year's increase would be about 0.6% for the services we delivered last year, significantly less than the rate of inflation. Even with those two key spending areas, we're presenting the lowest tax increase in 6 years. To staff and my fellow council members who have thrown a lot of passion behind this year's budget, I thank you. Collectively, we are working to ensure that Coquitlam remains a community of choice by residents, businesses, and visitors. Thank you.
The next item, item 6, is the 2015 5-year financial plan and capital program bylaws. Staff recommendations that Council give first, second, and third readings to the 2015 5-year financial plan bylaw number 4545. The Council give first, second, and third readings to the following bylaws which support the 2015 capital program: the Drainage Development Cost Charge Reserve Fund Expenditure Bylaw 4526, the Sewer Development Cost Charge Reserve Fund Expenditure Bylaw 4525, Water Development Cost Charge Reserve Fund Expenditure Bylaw 4524, the Transportation Development Cost Charge Reserve Fund Expenditure Bylaw 4521, the Parkland Improvement Development Cost Charge Reserve Fund Expenditure Bylaw number 4523. Thirdly, the Council approve the following allocations from statutory reserve funds which support the 2015 capital program: $12.4 million from the Land Sale Reserve, $5,060,000 from the Vehicle Replacement Reserve, and $3,170,000 from the Parkland 5% Reserve. And that 4, Council give first, second, and third readings to the 2015 DCC Amendment Bylaw number 4544.
Move recommendation. Second.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, seconded by Councillor, we'll go with Morrison, although several others did, I think. Councillor O'Neill, who also seconded it.
So 3 of us at the same time. Thank you very much, Mayor. I had made a couple of pages of notes about the things I wanted to talk about regarding this budget, and the Mayor hit all the highlights that I wanted to hit. The balance of providing the needed services with protecting our taxpayers from an over harsh burden of taxes. And it's something that I think we can all be proud of, that not only is this the 6th consecutive year that increase has decreased, but my records go back a couple of decades. This appears to be the 2nd lowest tax increase in 20 years. And that's pretty good. I'm very pleased with that. That's something that has been high on my agenda ever since I was elected a little more than 3 years ago. And the 2.3% overall increase this year is getting pretty close to the rate of the general inflation as well, so I'm pretty pleased with that. I was particularly pleased that we're able to do this while also providing some very necessary things. The Mayor mentioned the library technology. I thought very important. RCMP officers, very important as well. We are fortunate to be able to balance all of this taxpayer protection with listening to what the taxpayers and the citizens of Coquitlam really need. We are living within our means, and but we are providing what needs to be provided. It's true that some governments go over their budgets very carefully every year, while some other governments simply go over their budgets. And I'm glad to say that we're in the former category, not the latter. And on that point, I'll be very happy to vote in favor of this budget. Sixth consecutive year, the increase has decreased, second lowest tax increase in 2 decades. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Councillor Morrison.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the budget as well. It addresses a number of the issues that residents expressed to me when during the campaign. It incorporates a few of the initiatives that I spoke about specifically. The Mayor did touch on these topics. I just want to highlight very quickly. The hiring of 6 officers, because it's going to be targeted to crime hotspots, that helped me get over the edge of a 0.75% increase in a tax base. 6 officers to target crime that enables us to have our resources go out and deal with traffic safety and all the other general duties that our officers need to be. So I spoke about deployment of the RCMP through the campaign, and I think this program helps deliver that. The 2.34% increase is driven, as we said, by the new officers. As well, there's a significant recalculation of superannuation for our firefighters that happened in 2014 that we see in this budget. And these items themselves are over 50% of the cost increase. So again, as the Mayor indicated, when you factor out those items, we're well below the level of inflation, which indicates to me that there was significant work done by staff and then our council brethren to make sure that solutions were sought internally and not just to look to the wallets of our residents. I spoke about the need to increase our return on our reserves. And in this budget, we see $500,000 additional revenue, non-tax revenue, investment, and fee income. So again, this helps us put the brakes on those increasing taxes. This budget is going to help us deliver immediate priorities, but most importantly, in my eyes, it helps us build upon a strong base that councils before us have given, and enables us to move forward and plan for the future. So I want to take a moment to thank the staff, the department GMs for their work and willingness to address my questions. I seek to continually increase my understanding of the policies, the practices I work under. I'd like to point out Sheena specifically. I thank you for your patience as we had numerous discussions about budget and city practices. I appreciate the openness they've shown, and I look forward to building on this and ensuring that we continue to deliver the services most important to our residents. And keep spending in check. And as the Mayor has said, we want to make sure that we make Coquitlam the city that people want to live in and to bring their businesses to in the years to come. So I'm certainly supporting this 100%. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Well, thank you. I'll be supporting this budget as well because I believe it strikes a balance between the needs of a growing community with a growing demand for service improvements, and the need to recognize that our residents have limited financial resources and that we must spend their money wisely to keep tax increases as low as possible. When I was door knocking last year, many residents told me they were happy with the services that the city provides, but that they did want to see an increase in policing in their community. They wanted more traffic enforcement on the residential streets to make them safer, and they wanted to feel safe around the new SkyTrain stations. And I want to make sure that the benefits that we have from these new stations here in the city aren't outweighed by any increase in crime. So by hiring 6 new police officers to create a special team specifically dedicated to targeting crime in our city, I think goes a long way to addressing the concerns that I heard from those citizens. I also heard that people enjoy our parks, and that they want to see more parks and more improvements in our parks and recreational facilities. And with more and more residents living in multifamily accommodations or in houses with very small yards, I think it's important that we provide more parks for people to get outdoors and to stay active. This budget allows us to make annual investments in our parks by acquiring land, creating new parks to meet the growing demand, and to make improvements in our older parks and existing neighborhoods. And this budget also allows us to make investments in new sports and recreation facilities, and as the Mayor mentioned, in our library. This is, I think, a responsible budget because it addresses the need to put money away into, to maintain our roads and our buildings so that we aren't faced with a huge repair bill in the future. And I think this budget is also a reasonable compromise between the many new asks that we all heard in November and the need to keep tax increases as small as possible. When I campaigned in the election, I said that we have to look at ways to be, as cost effective as we can in the ways we deliver services. And as you mentioned, this increase of 2.34% is the smallest increase in 10 years. And while it still allows the city to maintain the level of service that most of our residents have come to expect, and it allows us to improve those services. As you said, it also represents that downward trend. The increases have been getting smaller every year for the last 6 years. And I think we're going in the right direction while still maintaining services. I note that in the 5-year forecast that increases are projected to hover in around the 3% range for the next few years, and I think we're going to have to, as a council, work hard to manage those expenses as they occur, and I think we've proved that working together as a group of councillors and with our staff and our finance department, that we are able to achieve a good budget and try to keep it within the realms of people's ability to pay. So for that reason, I will be supporting this budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you very much. Well, I have to say it's always fun to have 2 brand new councillors at budget time, because that's the time that they're going, oh, what did I do this for? And you can watch as they come in and all through the elections, I'm going to stop this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to change this. And we keep saying, you can't do that. The legislation doesn't allow. I'm going to do it anyhow. So it's been particular fun to watch Mr. Marsden, because he had so many plans and they all worked, but it was really fun to watch him talk to Sheena so many times, just so exasperated, goes Dennis, we can't do these things. But in the end, I think we've come out with a very, very, very good budget. For me, it's always been about safety. And if there's anything we owe the citizens of our community, it's that they know we have a full fire force and a full police force. And we have endeavored this year to make sure that we are topped up to the needs that we need. I'm very proud to say that we have a fully staffed new fire hall in Burke Mountain, and that's something to be very proud of. And we have staffed up very early. SkyTrain is coming, not for another year, but we have 6 new RCMP officers that will be getting staffed up for those that don't want to do other things than just ride the SkyTrain. I did want to say, too, that it's really a fine balance when we get an Ipsos Reid report that I know Councillor O'Neill absolutely loves every year. But there's a lot of people in our community that want lots and lots of new things. And there's the same amount of people that really want lower taxes. And it's a very fine balance to try and match and come to an easy middle road that's a good compromise. For me, parks are somewhere we spend a lot of money on, but they're a priority because the kids are our future. And we need to get them outside, we need to get them playing. And with a lot of the townhomes and apartments that we're building these days, we need the green space. They need places to ride their bikes and kick the ball around just like we used to do. So parks have been a big priority this year, and we've spent a lot of money. We now have a master parks plan in the works, and that has given us great direction. So thank you to staff for all your hard work, because every year you present budgets, we send them back and say, cut more, cut more, cut more. But I think you've done an admirable job, and as usual, Sheena McLeod and your department, absolutely excellent work. So I'll be very happy to support this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you very much. I will be too supporting this budget. Council went through a lot of work, a lot of give and take, a lot of back and forth between all councillors to come together to support this budget moving forward. We start today on the future discussions by council that will shape next year's budget, and our diligence in those decisions to keep costs down by making sure future facilities are needed but are provided, that are year-round, that provide the best dollar return to all of our taxpayers. So as we go forward today, these are decisions moving forward that will shape next year's budget and the budgets moving forward for operational costs, construction facility costs. This is my 10th budget, And we have achieved on councils 6 budgets with a decreasing tax rate. Will this always be possible? It's a fine balance. Probably not, but we will try, and we've tried our best over the years. I will go back to our 2005 when Mayor Stewart and I came on council, and one of the decisions we made was to add a 1% tax increase strictly for our roads budget, because our roads were in bad shape. And that 5 years of 1% tax increases equaled $4.25 million. And that told you how much underfunding the roads budget had been at that time. But we stepped forward and we did that. So at times those issues are going to come forward to council. And do you do the right things for today and for the future of your citizens when making decisions and budgets? And that what we did at that time was just not for today, but for the futures by adding that extra 1%. So those things can come forward. I'm glad that we're putting money in this for parks capital funding, facility maintenance of an increase. I think those are great things. Are we there? Maybe. I don't think we are yet. I think we still have more to deal to take the pressures away from the future needs of replacing existing facilities and the need for new facilities in our city. We have our capital tangible assets, which gives us a better read on all our assets, which is legislation passed by the federal government in 2009 that shows all our assets, where we are at with those assets in the values of money putting aside and replacing and the schedule to do that. Good legislation is something we've done. Mayor Stewart introduced it, was there, and Councillor Reid, when we started cyclical reviews that have gone through all the departments to make this city more efficient. I thank Mr. Steblin and the management team here at the city for their good work on streamlining and making us the 3rd best city to do business in this city. So having said all that, I'm very proud of this budget. I'm also very proud of adding 6 more police officers. I've always said that one of the key elements of my elections is making sure that this city is a safe place for all of us to live and keeping a handle on that. And we've done that, and I'm proud of that. I want to keep it that way. So I am supporting this budget moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Towner.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. As you are aware, having been inaugurated 3 months ago tonight, this is my first budget in my role as one of your city councillors. I worked on budgets in previous roles, and although operating with the same concept of doing the very best possible with the resources available, there's nothing like working on a budget for a big city that is also one of the fastest growing in the region. I'd like to use this opportunity not to discuss specifics of tonight's budget, but to share with you a few beliefs that I have. I believe that responsible municipal finance requires engaging with residents to confirm spending priorities and ensuring that costs are known. There are always competing requests for funding at the city, and residents need to be part of the conversation. Kudos to the staff and previous council involved in budget town hall meetings, and sincere kudos to each and every one of the residents who engaged in the budget process, either by attending the town hall meeting, participating in the Citizen Budget online budget simulator survey, or by contacting the city with a question, a concern, or to obtain additional info and provide input. Your input is valued, and I encourage you to stay engaged. I also believe in protecting taxpayers' interests, focusing on the priorities of the residents and making the best possible use of the resources, all while constantly looking for efficiencies in the way services are provided. I also believe that responsible local government uses dollars wisely, not only to look after the assets that we have now, but to look after plan for infrastructure for future generations. We have to plan well. Each of these beliefs that I have listed above, I wholeheartedly believe to be true in this budget. I knew heading into my role as a city councillor that the budget process would be a challenging task. That said, I want each and every one of you to know that Coquitlam staff are absolutely top-notch with respect to what they do. The support from staff went way beyond my expectations. All the resources that we needed to make the best possible decisions were provided. This ranged from detailed and relevant reports, one-on-one meetings as they were requested, and answers to questions sent their way via email or phone calls. This also included multiple workshops and presentations for us to attend so we could have all the information that we needed to make the best possible decisions. I want to express sincere gratitude to our E-team, but even more so to Sheena and Arlene in finance. Thank you. I want you to know that resident priorities were considered in the budget process and that spending decisions were made in the best interests of the taxpayers. The city has been diligent in looking for process improvements and identifying opportunities for budget improvements so that services and programs are run as efficiently and as effectively as possible. Nothing in this budget was taken lightly. Due diligence was definitely exercised. Because of what I've just outlined, and because of my own individual beliefs towards responsible municipal finance were met, I am supporting this budget, and I'm happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zarrillo.
Thank you. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank staff and all of the employees for the City of Coquitlam. This budget absolutely depends on the work ethic of our staff, and I'm absolutely sure that if it wasn't for their work ethic, that this budget would be higher than it is. That's all I wanted to say. I just know that it's staff that made this happen this year, and I'm just pleased to support this budget and extremely proud of our focus on public safety this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No other speakers. The motions have been read. There are a number of them, and I won't try to encapsulate them. The motion is on the budget. All in favor? All opposed? The budget carries unanimously for the first time in a decade. All weekend. I too want to thank staff for the work that they've put into this process. We have, I believe, the best finance staff around. They answer questions. They are patient. They have the answers at their fingertips in almost all cases, and they're conservative. They are very diligent to make certain that we don't take chances with the public's money. So we have a lot, as Councillor Zarrillo just said, we have an awful lot of thanks that have to go out to the staff in our finance department, the staff in all of our departments, including our police and fire, who really work hard to deliver the kinds of service that our residents have come to depend on. So thank you very much, and thank you, Council, our first unanimous budget since I was young and had hair. Mr. Clerk. Quick, move on to something else.
We have to work on our transitions.
Yeah.
The next item, item 7, concerns the Coquitlam Corporate Partners Sponsorship Program. Staff recommendations that Council endorse the Coquitlam Corporate Partners Sponsorship Program and direct staff to seek marketing partnerships for the list of 2015 opportunities identified in the report before you. 2, adopt the sponsorship and advertising policy, which is attachment 1, to govern this program. And 3, authorize staff to enter into sponsorship and advertising agreements in accordance with the terms of the policy. We have introductory comments by the General Manager, and then we have small presentation comments and a video from the Director of Planning and Business Services.
Yes, thank you. Your Worship and Council, we're pleased to bring forward for Council consideration today and endorsement a new Coquitlam sponsorship program called the Coquitlam Corporate Partners. This is an important initiative that started in 2014. It is an initiative that tries to enhance the city's governance, certainly in the area of potential new sources of revenue, and but at the same time also remain in alignment with community goals and objectives. Michelle Hunt, who's our Director of Planning and Business Services in Parks, Recreation and Culture, will be providing some overview comments and describing the program, and also will be unveiling a short video, which I'm sure Council will enjoy. I know Michelle will probably express her thanks as well, but it is a cross-departmental initiative, and a number of departments have helped us put together the program, particularly economic development and corporate communications. So I really, my hat's off to them. So without further ado, Michelle, take it away.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Yes, I just want to expand on what Mr. Alueva mentioned. This has been an interdepartmental initiative. Corporate communications, economic development and tourism, corporate planning, our deputy city manager, legal and finance have all been involved. And I especially want to mention Mary Morrison Clark, our manager of community recreation and culture, who's been my co-worker and partner on this program and is going to be instrumental in actually implementing it as well. So we've spent a number of months researching how other municipalities have implemented sponsorship and hopefully have taken their best practices. We're hoping to position this program in a way that not only benefits the city, but also our corporate partners and our residents. One key element is that we want to do this in a phased manner, and we've identified both through the policy and the program a number of priorities for this year, and we want to be sensitive and implement this in a measured way and get our community's feedback as we move forward. We also want to make sure we secure the right corporate partners for our facilities, events and our programs so that we meet our win-win-win objective. So with that, I will ask the clerks to play our short video.
My beautiful green screen.
Hi, I'm Michelle Hunt. I'm the Director of Planning and Business Services with Parks, Recreation and Culture at the City of Coquitlam. I'm here to share some information about our marketing partnership program called Coquitlam Corporate Partners. Through this program, we will partner with businesses who want to find new ways to reach out to their customers. It's a great opportunity for organizations to raise their profile and promote themselves to existing and future customers within our community. It's a win for everyone. Businesses will raise their profile, the city will generate additional revenues, and residents can enjoy better facilities, programs, and events. One of the first marketing opportunities that we're offering is the naming rights to the new Poirier Forum. This facility provides space for a wide range of people, and we expect to see about 300,000 athletes and spectators walk through the forum doors each year. We're looking for a corporate partner who wants to purchase naming rights to this facility. It's an outdoor advertising opportunity like no other. The business's name will be prominently displayed and seen by more than 2 million people passing by in their vehicles throughout the year. The business will have an equally high profile inside the building, with all sorts of marketing opportunities. We're very excited about this program because it will generate additional revenue for the city and bring value to everyone who loves this community. As a city, we're always looking for ways to improve our programs, facilities and events and make Coquitlam such an incredible place to live for our residents. Check out our website to learn more.
That's easily one of the best narrator voices I've heard in ages. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you very much. A very impressive work, a very impressive presentation, and overall the report's very good work as well. It shows, I think, that we're not rushing into this, something that we've all been pretty excited about, the opportunities that are presented by sponsorship. But we're not rushing into it without the structure to allow it to succeed. I think if we didn't have this planned structure, we'd be going off in all directions, and really it would setting it up to fail. As the narrator from that last video said, we've got a lot to be proud of, but that means when there's also a lot we can take advantage of here. Now I have just a little process question that comes on top of this. And we have seen over the last several months, the last couple of years, now and again little controversies develop about the types of companies that want to sponsor various facilities. The most recent one was in November. The Vancouver School Board vetoed a sponsorship opportunity from a corporate partner because they didn't like the sort of business this corporate partner was in, this potential corporate partner. And yet this business was law-abiding, it was economically beneficial, it was a socially responsible business. Now, what I want to know is, are these decisions for sponsorship going to come to council? Are they going to come to council with recommendations? Are they going to be all made by staff? How will these potential pitfalls be avoided or dealt with when we come to sticky issues like this? Mr. Mayor, do you know if anybody on staff would have an answer to that?
I don't know of anyone that would have a specific answer all prepared for that, but it looks like Mr. Alueva is interested in saying nothing on that subject. Mr. Alueva.
Yes, the policy in the report does set procedural guidelines around restrictions on who the city would partner with, and particularly if there's a reputational issue. There are guidelines in the policy which do deal with this in detail. In terms of the type of decision staff would make, I guess we would be quite happy to have come forward opportunities of sponsorship. That's one thing we're trying to generate. If there's a significant opportunity with a company that perhaps is unknown or has a potential reputational issue, yes, we would bring that to council for vetting and decision. If it's a fairly straightforward, small sponsorship opportunity, it meets the policy, it's small, staff would have the ability to deal with that. But if it's over a certain dollar value, it's $100,000, or are there some issues around its whether it's allowed under the policy, then it is council's decision.
Good, thank you. I just wanted to know in advance how we'd be dealing with these sorts of things, and so we weren't caught flat-footed and maybe put in situations we didn't want to be in. So this, I think that makes a lot of sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Cirillo.
Well, thank you very much for this. I believe I previously mentioned my concerns around the ROIs. It's a small financial return for the amount of staff time and investment. And I noticed in the report it mentioned that there's also the chance that we may use third-party resources for this. So I'm going to reiterate it again. I'm tenuous on this one. It seems to me a little bit of the cart before the horse. I'd love to see the tourism strategy concrete, set in stone, before we went out, especially to naming buildings and doing that sort of thing. So I am very pleased with the sponsorships that we get around our events and some of the things that happen in our pools and ice rinks. But I'm very nervous to go ahead on something that's got such a small financial return in relation to the size of our budget, that's going to take staff resources away from stuff that we really need to get done this year, especially with such a tight budget. So I don't think that's news to anyone, but I just wanted to share it here. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, okay, go ahead, a motion. Moved by Councillor O'Neill, seconded by Councillor Asmundson. The recommendations are moved. Any further discussion? All in favour? Opposed? Councillor Cirillo is opposed. The motion carries.
Next item, item 8, concerns zoning amendment bylaw number 4546. This pertains to 606 Alderson Avenue. Staff recommendations that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4546, and that bylaw 4546 be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I was looking at the drawings for this, and it just seemed to me a very awkward parking situation for people in unit number A in terms of trying to get into their garage. And so I'm just wondering if when it comes to the public hearing we get some more information on that. It just seems to me it would make more sense to have the garage door facing the front of the street rather than the inside, seeing that whole section is garage. I'm just worried about how they're going to get in and out of the garage, cars blocking the access for Unit B, that sort of thing. So if we get a little bit more information when that comes, that'd be great, please.
Mr. McIntyre on that.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. Certainly, we can have a closer look at that. It is a bit of an innovative approach to gaining access, vehicle access to the property, and having this auto court in behind with the garages off that. Typically, we would analyze that. There would be turning movements just to make sure vehicles can turn within those areas, but I'll go back and check with staff that worked on the file, the application. We'll have additional information as part of the public hearing brief as supported by council.
Thank you. Councillor Hodge.
Yes, similar questions that Councillor Wilson asked. I'm looking again because when parking always comes up on these, so the more information we can have in advance or at the public hearing would be great. I'm looking at for my case, it's the parking for Unit B. It looks like the Unit B, the parking is proposed to be in at the back of it. That's correct?
That's correct. Through the chair coming down off of Alderson, there'd be a common driveway coming down along the west property line into this auto court.
Right.
And in that auto court, there'd be access into the garage for both Unit A and Unit B, as well as a separate parking stall in that area.
Right. Okay. So there's open parking behind B and an enclosed parking within B. I'm just trying to look at is that enclosed parking at the back of B or just a stall behind B?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. The drawing's a little faint, but there's 3 stalls in that area. Or the one stall and the 2 garages.
Okay, but it means they have to come in off of Alderson and drive past the back of A. It's basically we've created a very long driveway through the property as opposed to just coming in off of 10B. So I can just see that we lose all that parking beside A because they can't park there because you block Unit B, and it's a lot of driveway, which is fine if it's all your own house, but when you're sharing with your neighbors, it's shared driveway. So I'd like to sort of see if we can have a little bit more work and a little bit more explanation on the parking and the access, and whether we're making best use of the land and the parking resources.
Yeah. As mentioned, Your Worship, I'll go back and talk with the staff to better understand what the rationale was for this approach for the parking driveway access and garage structures. I would note, though, that with these housing choice projects, they tend to be a little unique and site-specific sometimes, and invariably, yeah, I think Councillor Hodges' observation is correct, that sometimes we see if they're trying to bring the parking onto the property, make it internal, a fair bit of the lot then ends up being used for driveway and parking access, and that I guess the counterpoint would be if there was just separate driveways coming into each unit and garages there, then you would break up the street frontage as well and take away from parking as well. So sometimes it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But we'll look at that and we'll have some commentary for you as part of the public hearing brief.
I look forward to getting that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you very much. Back to Mr. McAllister. It comes back to the parking and the issue. I don't have a problem with the driveway through the back. I understand that with the corner lot there's only 3 on-street parking. If we were to open up more letdowns for driveways, we probably wouldn't have any parking on the street in front. But my concern comes down is I refresh my memory because I can't remember seeing it in the report. Is there in the strata agreement about the parking space? Because basically you have Unit A with an enclosed garage. You've got Unit B with an enclosed and open parking space, and then you've got 2 parking spaces by Unit C. So is there an agreement on, because if I look at Unit A, it only has the 1 spot, and how do you work the agreement with the other open spots? I could see conflicts between the units on potential use of those spots. Somebody on C saying, well, I don't have it inside, these are my 2 spots, and so is there going to be an agreement?
Your Worship, that's another good question. I think what happens is there's a parking standard, a parking requirement, and sometimes that can end up with an odd number of stalls, and some units seem to have 2, others have 1. Again, I will check with staff to see what the thinking is and how those parking spaces are allocated.
Because I just looked at, with the units on the one side has most of the parking space, and the other, the 1A doesn't, right? So that was just my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Just on parking, my favorite subject, as you know. When people ask questions about parking, like that has gone around the table tonight, staff always says, oh, well, this is fine and this is fine and we'll look at this. But then again, there's always 3 on-street parking spots. My streets aren't there for the benefits of people to get away from providing enough parking on their lots. And we get one street and we get 10 new houses and we use the same words over and over. Oh, well, there's street parking. I mean, we have to start being really adamant that people have enough parking on their lots, and the street parking is obviously for visitors and things like that. But I don't want to keep relying on street parking for these units. And if we have to start building teeny tiny houses that only take 1 car, then that's what we start doing. We just change our zoning, change our whole idea of it. I'm done. That was a rant.
I don't think it qualifies as a rant. Okay, it was a rant. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, just to finish off the parking discussion.
Yeah, hopefully.
I hope, maybe. I don't know. One last question, one question for me anyway. So the report says that 4 parking spaces are required by the bylaw, but 5 are being provided. That didn't ring a familiar bell to me, with 3 units there and 4. So how is that calculated? The one freestanding unit is 2, and then the 2 adjoining units are 1, equals 4. Okay, I wasn't sure about that, and that's so, good. I'll ask a follow-up question in maybe 5 minutes on another subject, on another issue before us. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Goes to public hearing. Carried unanimously.
Next report, item 9, concerns an official community plan amendment bylaw 4547 and a zoning amendment bylaw 4548. These 2 bylaws pertain to a proposed subdivision at 3404 Roxton Avenue. Staff recommendations that Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 4547. That in accordance with the Local Government Act, the Council consider Bylaw 4547 in conjunction with the City of Coquitlam 2014 5-year Financial Plan Bylaw 4451 and the Regional Solid Waste Management Plan. 3, the Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw 4548 and that bylaws number 4547 and 4548 be referred to public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Morrison, seconded by Councillor Hodge. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. I'm quite happy to move this forward to public hearing. It's a very interesting development proposal, and in that it also talks about the establishment of another Green Street, something that's been a favorite subject of Council for the last several months. The Green Street would be just on the north edge of the proposed development. And I presume that staff has been working with the developer to say, get his cooperation about this. But I'm concerned about the potential developer on the other side of this, or the landowner on the other side of this. Do we have information, or is it proper to talk about what the interest of the landowner to the north of this would be? We're proceeding with the Green Street that obviously, I think, with the cooperation of this developer, but what about the land to the north of this? Do we know what that landowner? Turned it sideways. Yeah, that's it's to the north. Yeah, so it's the land to the north of the development. So I wonder if I don't think am I misunderstanding something here? Or is it so the landowner to the north? I think it's north the way this is. Sideways. Yeah. Right, on the other side of the Green Street. Who knows about that landowner and what his or her response to having a Green Street on his or her property is? And should that be part of this discussion? Or should we have that information? Mr. Mayor? Do you know
I don't know.
Does any staff member know anything about that?
I'm going to refer it to Mr. McIntyre, who might know what the landowner to the north of Roxton, which is a Green Street at that point, how they feel about living on a Green Street or potentially developing their property on a Green Street.
Yeah.
Your Worship, I have to confess, I haven't been in discussion with that property owner, but I'll check with staff to see if they have. But I think there's a couple of things here. It shouldn't come as a surprise. If you look at attachment 5, one of the foldouts that is oriented with north at the top, it shows that when the Lower High Creek plan was done, neighborhood plan was done, it was contemplated some of these streets that now run out to Coast Meridian would be closed and replaced by pedestrian accesses and greenways through there. So presumably that property owner to the north would be, particularly if they're going to look at developing their property or redeveloping their property, would have a look at the neighborhood plan and understand that. But I will check with staff to see if there's been any other discussions. With the rezoning, if it's supported by council to go forward to public hearing, obviously that property owner would be contacted.
Well, the other part of my statement / question was a presumption that the landowner, the developer of the property that's actually before us is fully involved in the Green Street discussion as well. Can we answer that, and how close is that discussion, and is there a favorable response and all that?
So with the application that we have before us tonight, that applicant early in the process, in the preliminary discussions and design, would have been made aware of the plans for Roxton on the north side. The idea was to close that off and have a trail and greenway out to Coast Meridian. So they likely went ahead with their planning for their project, for their design, with that in mind. And my understanding is they are fully supportive of that. They are prepared and committed to doing the works. Rather than building Roxton Avenue across the frontage, they'd be building their part of the Green Street. The question is, it would be to the property owner to the north of that. Again, I'll check with staff just to see what their level of awareness and knowledge is. Any works done along there obviously we'd want to make sure that that property wasn't losing access to their site. So we want to check on that as well, and the various utilities. I would expect, I dare say, that this sort of development model now has become, I think this is what, the third we've seen in this neighborhood, and this sort of general approach with the fee simple row houses and a combination of fee simple single family. So I would think they see this as an opportunity, as the way that neighborhood is developing, and they'd probably be interested in support of that way. But again, we'll check with staff and make sure we have that information available to council. Yeah,
and at the public hearing, I guess the developer / property owner of this one and of the one to the north would have the opportunity to speak to us as well, so we could hear from that. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. I had a similar question as Councillor O'Neill, so I will just congratulate our staff on coming up with a very creative solution and what I think will be a great development.
Okay, the motion is first reading and a public hearing. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Next item 10 is zoning amendment bylaw number 4549. This pertains to 716 and 718 Morrison Avenue. Staff recommendations that council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4549, and that bylaw 4549 be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Reid, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, so this is sort of a follow-up question to the question from a couple of items ago regarding the numbers of required parking spaces. So in the last time you said that 5 are being provided when only 4 are required. In this report, 7 are proposed, but you don't say how many are required. How many are required here? Mr. Mayor, do you know if anybody on staff has the answer?
Well, to be honest with you, I I don't actually know. I typically wait for one of them to volunteer.
They're just following procedure here. I don't like addressing them directly.
He's following proper procedure, and that's what seems so strange. Councillor, Mr. McIntyre.
Your Worship, I'm sorry. I see in that section of the report we've talked about the number of spaces proposed. I believe there would be 6 spaces required for this application, but I'd have to confirm. Just give me a moment, please.
You can get the answer at the public hearing. You can. It's fine. I don't need to know it now.
I should know that offhand, but I don't.
It's just always good to know if they're exceeding, meeting the bare minimum, and it helps us make our decision and a little better. Thank you very much.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. This lot exceeds the minimum lot area by almost 1,000 square feet, yet they're still asking for variances. I'm just kind of wondering, at what point do we expect smaller houses? It seems odd to me that we would grant variances when the lot exceeds the minimum size by 1,000 square feet. I understand, it gives them more living area between the houses and between the garage and everything, but does this mean that we need to look at our regulations for housing choices, or because this isn't the first time we've been asked for variances for front and back setbacks?
Mr. McIntyre.
Your Worship, an interesting question. Because what we're using is a fairly standard 7.6 meter front yard setback, and that's common across most of the single family and duplex type zones. Whether with these housing choices, because this is a fairly standard lot, but by the time you have a parking structure or separate parking structure at the back, some separation between that and one of the dwellings and some usable outdoor space, and then other separation in the other dwelling, it doesn't seem to all quite fit. So let me take that back and discuss with staff. One of the things we have on our to-do list is the housing choices review, and that would be a piece. We want to feed into that. Does that setback, should that be followed with these type of applications, or some other variation is more appropriate? With the setbacks, though, because you've got to remember that these housing choices projects are typically infill in an existing neighborhood, and so you tend to want to sort of respect and follow the other setbacks and siting sort of criteria that would apply in that neighborhood. So getting too much out of line with the other buildings there might sort of stand out or stick out. So a little bit of flex I think would be sufficient and appropriate, but anything too different could be very different. If you get my drift.
No, I understand, and I respect that. I'm just thinking we keep giving variances, right? And so to me, it's not necessarily respecting what's a standard setback. Yeah. And I think part of the housing choices is to provide smaller houses, more affordable houses, and these are 2,000 square feet. They're not small houses, right? So I'm just asking, just kind of curious as to the philosophy behind that. But
yeah. I guess through the chair, the other response would be the development variance permit. It's there as a tool. It's for ultimately council's consideration and determination, and so you have to look at each and every application, because they do tend to be kind of unique, these projects, and so like a one-size-fits-all doesn't fit all the time, and so having the DVP process allows for some flexibility, and you may then determine or judge that, yeah, that'll work in that situation. The impacts are not significant, and it makes sense. Or it could be something that's, whoa, that's too major a deviation or a departure from the zoning requirements, and it doesn't make sense. So I think we want to be careful, allow ourselves a little bit of flexibility in how we approach these.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I'll raise my voice here. I'll take a different point of view from Councillor Wilson. Actually, these are about the smallest single-family homes that will be built in Coquitlam this decade, I think. The two of them are in the order of 1,300 square feet in floor area plus basement. I'm looking at proposed house A and proposed house B, 669 square feet for the main floor, 600 for both of them actually, 627 upstairs. So these are quite modest homes, and so in fact they're barely the 3-bedroom, 2-story home that can be built on some of the neo-traditional lots in other communities. So I think this is actually what we were trying to get. When we envisioned housing choices, we envisioned trying to save a house on the lot and trying to add additional structures. And here we've done that. We see a proposal to retain a house and to add 2 modest 1,300 square feet plus basement detached homes. Oh, okay, got it. Okay. Sorry, you included the garages. Got it. So I think this is where we should be heading, and I would encourage builders to come forward with things like this. This produces, I think, a really affordable mix on a city lot. So I'm going to support having this go to public hearing. Councillor Zerillo.
Thank you. I had 2 notes on my report here. One was definitely want to hear what the neighbors think. It looks like this is one of the first ones on the street to redevelop. Is that true?
Your Worship, I think as mentioned in the report, I think there's an attachment there that shows that there's a couple of other housing choices sites.
There's 2 more there, yeah.
In the general area, not on this block face on Morrison, on the backside of that block, just in behind.
Okay. So one right behind them. So that was one of my points, is I'm hoping that neighbors will come out because I'm interested to hear what they think. And then the other one was just, again, about the DVPs, the development variances. We'll hear from the public on this, but there's 4 here, and this is going to set precedent for trying to get juggling in the other lots too. So I'm tentative on that, and I'll be interested to hear what neighbors and fellow residents have to say. Those were my 2 points. That seems like a lot of DVPs to me. That's it. Thanks.
Okay. There you go. No other speakers. The motion is first reading in a public hearing. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item 11 is zoning amendment bylaw number 4550. This pertains to 515 Austin Avenue. Staff recommendations that Council give first reading to City of Coquitlam zoning amendment bylaw number 4550, and that bylaw 4550 be referred to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Hodge. Councillor Reid.
Got lots of questions on this one before it comes to public hearing. This is a really funny little piece of property that's been sitting there forever. So my first question is, and I should be able to do the math, but I'm not going to. This piece of property, they're only going 16 stories, I think, is it? 18? It's something small, 18. What are the ones next door? Aren't they 24? The 3 towers, they're 24. So is the property too small to let them go, or did they just choose to stay at 18?
Through the chair, I believe the 24-story towers, if that's indeed the height, that's a little further up Austin.
It's right in the same little cul-de-sac. I used to live there.
At the intersection of Whiting and Austin.
My question is, why would they not build out to full capacity? Or
I believe it's
the site constraints?
The site size and parking availability.
Oh, I need to know. Okay. So the next thing is the parking. Of course, they've asked for a 5% variance in the parking because I guess they're going to have fun getting parking in here, reading this. It's slope land, et cetera, et cetera. So if they're going to be asking for such a variance, and it is a weird site. God, I know so many people that have looked at this site. My concerns are a couple. One, I would like to know before public hearing if these people have applied to any of the neighboring properties to see if they could use some kind of a comprehensive development, specifically the one right at the corner of Austin and North Road, because that would make a lot more sense for everybody if they could do that. So I would like to know if they did, and then if they could, would it be worth their while to do something so that we could go a little higher and make parking, and I see, Raul, we're on the same page here, so that makes sense. If they don't, and they do manage to go through all these development variances that they're asking for, and they do need the 5% parking variance, on top of the very generous parking variance you give them in the TDS, I would like to see that this developer commits to selling a certain number of suites without parking, and commits to that, and that the price reflects those particular units. So I'm not prepared to give away parking for nothing.
Mr. McIntyre.
I'll smile.
Thanks, Your Worship, and thank you, Councillor Reid. Just consistency. I believe the parking variance, the 5%, that's what's. It's not on top of what is.
Oh, I thought it was on top of, because that's what it's. Oh.
My understanding is no. It's what's enabled in the zoning bylaw, given the location of the site relative to transit, and that's the first step that they can apply for.
Okay, but let's use our beanies here. And when we get apartments that are right there and they're new and they're coming up and they're right next to transit, we could be asking if they. I mean, downtown in Burrard they do it. They sell apartments without parking, and it's reflected in the price, so it helps for more affordable purchasing for our kids. And they don't need cars, and they won't get a parking spot either. And it's always reflected in the price, even as the resales go on, that there is no parking. So I have to ask these questions because we've got to get some more affordable places for our kids to live. And the additional levels of parking, how many levels, we don't know yet, because we've got the water table there, right?
Through the Chair, I believe they're going for 4 levels of parking.
See, and when you're going to that expense, that's what makes it more sense to be combining with a neighbor and trying to do a more comprehensive development. So I just really have to ask. I mean, I'm willing to put this on to public hearing, but boy, there's some questions here that maybe it would be a much better development if it could come in a different way.
Fair enough, Your Worship. Some good points there. Certainly, when staff are approached with proposals for properties, and some sites,
I know.
And this is a fairly tight site, and on top of that, there's the necessary road widenings on both sides, on Whiting and Austin, so it makes it a tough site even tougher. Through that analysis, we do want to make sure that adjoining smaller sites too would not be left undevelopable, and so that would be part of the analysis.
And the site right on the corner, its neighbor is ready. It's an old strip mall, so it's ready. I mean, it's so ripe for development. It just makes much more sense. But thank you very much. Those are my questions, so I'd like to note those before public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rasmussen.
Well, thank you, Councillor Reid. Took some of my points here.
Okay, thank you.
Let me just continue.
Sorry.
Mr. Mayor, we had to wait for you for the beginning for quite a while.
I was speaking for you then. Go right ahead.
I do agree that this is a very tight constraint, and what Councillor Reid said about the adjoining site would make a better overall design. And what gets me, it comes back to I talked about the town centre. This is an entrance point to our city. And this to me is a very square design. It doesn't have a lot of unique looks to it as we come into our city. And I understand by the constraints they have on this site and the 18 stories and the parking that go underneath that. But I would like to see staff talk to them about extending it right to Austin so we can create that North Road Austin piece that really sort of shapes that main entrance into Coquitlam, a more uniquely designed building that creates a better look coming into the city. On the idea of selling without parking, you know, we look at University City. They had to buy a parking lot from up there to deal with the parking. I look, when you do that, people have vehicles, you have a terrible problem of parking on the street afterwards. So, and there would be, there's a problem there now with on this site here. So I have some questions about this moving forward. I think I echo Councillor Rees. I'd like to go back to the person talked about, look at that site if it's possible, to make a more comprehensive development, because they're going to be too tight, small. You're not going to get, both sites are going to be challenged on really doing something quite unique that's an entranceway into our city. So I just have concerns about it. But I'll move it on to public hearing.
Thank you. Question at 5:15 Austin is first reading and a public hearing. All in favor? All opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Next item, item 12, concerns Fortis BC's Eagle Mountain Woodfibre gas pipeline project and other significant projects. Staff recommendations that Council endorse the City's comments on Fortis BC's environmental assessment application for the Eagle Mountain Woodfibre gas pipeline project, which is attachment 1, and direct staff to forward the comments to the BC Environmental Assessment Office.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Asmundson. Councillor Reid.
Well, is this the one where they have the bright blue and white building in the middle of the forest, and we're sort of worried about the visual?
There is a building that's been there for a while.
Yeah, but they were wondering, there's nothing, remember they showed us a picture, is this the one that was bright blue? They're painting this big building?
I don't remember the color.
Well, I suggested that they paint it green and brown, and maybe it wouldn't stick out like a sore blue thumb in the middle of a forest. Well, I don't see that in here.
Mr. McIntyre, is this going to be camouflage?
Camouflage.
Oh, okay. Dana, sorry.
Through your worship, we have been in discussion with Fortis BC staff, and indeed, it is going to be a new building, but they're proposing to wrap it and have it blend in with the surrounding background.
Perfect. Anything except bright blue, and then they're wondering why it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. Duh. Okay. I'm happy.
This is also the project where we asked for, and they did commit to extending the Coquitlam Crunch, and we have captured that as one of the conditions.
Perfect. Thank you.
There you go. All right. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. I really appreciate the work that went into these recommendations and all the research that you did. And I think, you know, for me, the three issues were the look of the building, so it's great to hear that they're going to wrap it. The other one was the power lines and the suggestion to underground the power lines. Hopefully they'll take that up. And the third one, a big one, was the noise, because I've been up there. I've been on Parkway, and you can hear it 24 hours a day. And just wondering, you know, when we recommend that it should not be any louder than it currently is with the new compressors, is there any requirement for them to heed our suggestions, or is this just a recommendation, in your opinion?
Yeah, through your worship, it would just be counter the city's position that they don't increase noise levels from what it is today. Their position right now, Fortis BC's position, is that they meet the permissible noise levels from the BC Oil and Gas Commission, which I feel are very generous. I think, based on their calculation, their permissible sound levels at the closest house is 48 decibels, and by their calculations, they're going to probably have noise levels to about 37 decibels, but they still haven't answered the question whether that's louder than the existing station or not. So, yeah, I think, you know, Fortis BC, unless they're ordered by any of their regulating agencies, they're not obliged to heed our recommendations.
Do our noise bylaws govern a facility like this? Our city's noise bylaws?
Do our city noise bylaws regulate utilities? I think I know the answer, but
through your worship,
Mr.
yes, I
Diaz.
believe the City of Coquitlam's noise bylaw is applicable, but based on my recollection, I don't think that the noise levels would exceed that based on the reading.
We don't have a specific decibel level, though, I don't think, in our noise bylaw, if I'm remembering correct. But it's more subjective.
I think the noise shall not bother anyone is the technical wording.
Something to that effect. So because it's already noticeable, it seems to me that if it were any louder, it would be much more of a nuisance. So how would we enforce something like that, in your opinion, if it ended up being noisier than it is now?
Fortunately, the bylaw enforcement folks aren't here, and they're the ones who enforce our noise bylaws. Mr. Diozegi, though, might have...
Your worship, I think under the circumstances, the best method would be prevention. In other words, when we receive the plans from the applicant, we will obviously look at very closely the air noise mitigation measures proposed, and we should be able to judge with the air specialist engineers whether the noise levels will be considered to be a nuisance or not. So I think we must not miss this opportunity at the time of the application. If we missed it, then the enforcement would become extremely difficult, if not impossible.
Exactly, and I'm just wondering if maybe we should make sure that they understand in these recommendations what our noise bylaw is, and that way there's no mistaking, I guess. And the only other thing I wanted to mention is that the input process period has been extended to March 27th now, so there's still time for people to provide input into this if they have any questions or concerns.
And Mr. Dumont may have a little bit of assistance on the bylaw enforcement side.
Thank you. I don't have the answer with me tonight, but I'll follow up with our bylaw enforcement about the applicability of our bylaw and what we may be able to do relative to the noise.
Okay. In case
the only other thing that I would highlight is that the EA is absolutely enforceable on the applicant, and that's why we're making comments to the EA process, and that if they're picked up as we expect them to do and made a condition of the project, then it's absolutely enforceable by the EA office.
So if they commit to our recommendation, then it's enforceable.
That's absolutely correct, and that's why we're making the recommendation.
But when I asked are they required to accept our recommendation, the answer I got was no, so I was just, yeah. So, yeah, I think we have to make it clear what our noise bylaw is and what our concerns are, and push hard and hope for the best. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Zrillo.
Thank you. Well, this is quite a complex issue. I'm glad Mr. Diazeki is here, but I do have some questions about attachment 1, and then I did have some notations on the report. First of all, on attachment 1 for the public input, I see that we're going out to groups, and we're also going out to the Westwood Plateau Community Association, but I'm wondering if we could also include here a radius of residents, a radius from the compressor station. Would like to see input from residents, just because it could potentially affect the value of their properties. Is it possible to add that here? A mail out or some kind of distribution?
Yeah, through your worship, we definitely can add that to the comments and ask that they do that.
Thank you. Then on page 2 of attachment 1, the very bottom, the power overhead lines between Eagle Mountain, that last paragraph, if council would be open to it, I'd certainly like to see some stronger language here, just maybe a little bit more forceful language in regards to having the backup power I think it's going to be important, and I do appreciate it being here, but I'm just wondering if we could have some stronger language there about our recommendation for that.
Where's that exactly?
Where are you? Page 2 of attachment 1, identification of potential effects on wildlife, and at the last paragraph it just talks about having, if there's loss of power, and that they should consider underground power lines. I'd just like to see that a little bit stronger. And then my other notation on the attachment here is that we talk about the Mariner Way project, that, you know, this is an extension. There'll be some upgrades on Como Lake, and there'll be some upgrades on Mariner Way, and I'm just wondering if there's a tie in here. Again, I don't have the technical background to know all of this, but I'm wondering if we need to be mentioning something about the Mariner Way project here that could impact something in the future. I don't know, but it just came to my mind. How is Mariner Way tying into this attachment 1, and should it even be mentioned?
Yeah, through your worship. Yeah, the Mariner Way project, according to Fortis BC, is a totally separate project. The pipeline on Mariner Way corridor needs to be twinned primarily to supply gas to the Lower Mainland, but also to increase capacity to also supply gas to the Woodfibre plant. But even if the Woodfibre plant, liquefied natural gas plant, did not go ahead, they would still be twinning that gas line on the Mariner Way corridor.
Thank you so much. And that comes to my other question that I had here in the margins of the report, was what percentage is going to the Lower Mainland customers for consumption, and what percentage is going to the Woodfibre LNG plant in Squamish? Do we have any ideas?
No, we don't, but we can ask Fortis PC that question.
That would be great, because I think, if I remember correctly from last time, is that the city does not receive taxes unless the consumption of the gas happens in Coquitlam. So I would like to have an understanding of what kind of financial benefit the Coquitlam resident may see, because, and that has to go with not just what's happening on Mariner Way, I guess. I don't know. I mean, like I'm saying, this is so technical. It talks about it on page 3, that it's a separate transmission gas pipeline planned along Mariner Way. I made the notation, what percentage of that goes to mainland, or at least even Coquitlam consumption? I'd just like to understand. Okay, and then page 2, I again just made the note about have the neighbors been consulted. I really do think this could have an effect on land values, and I think that the neighbors closest should hear about it. And I think that's all that I've got. I know that the noise is a concern. A noise is a concern for the neighbors. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And in case that wasn't clear, I believe true as well that the noise is the serious concern here. The potential impact on neighbors, and not necessarily just neighbors, but we all recall when Westwood Track was running, that the neighbors that heard it the best were about 5 or 6 kilometers away in kind of the Ranch Park area. You could hear it on Moray and on Thermal and going up the hills in South Coquitlam, 5 kilometers away. This is a different intensity of noise, obviously, but it still is something that we're going to have to contemplate line of sight and whether that would have an impact. I mean, I've been to the area of this plant, and I know other members of council have probably seen it as well. It's somewhat wilderness, but it isn't entirely wilderness, and it's not that far away from the nearest homes, and quite a lot of residential development in that neighborhood. So let's make sure we get some commitments related to the noise. No other speakers. The motion is the motion up? It is. Okay, it's endorse the city's comments, and there was one addition to that, so the comments is likely being amended by our discussion today. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Your Worship, we have 2 items of other business. Copied on blue pages at the back for those in the audience who are here. The first concerns the appointment of a council representative to the Tri-Cities Healthier Communities Partnership. Staff recommendations that Council appoint Councillor Marsden to be the council representative to the Tri-Cities Healthier Communities Partnership.
We had second thoughts about it? Councillor O'Neill moves that. Councillor Oops, Councillor Hodge seconds it. Any comments?
I'm happy to represent the city with this community partnership. I think it's consistent with serving as liaison for Fraser Health, the work I've done with the Eagridge Hospital in the past. Economic development will play a part here as well. So I think there's a number of consistencies in other committees that I'm on. So
perfect.
Very happy. Thank you.
Thank you for stepping up. The motion is to appoint Councillor Morrison. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Our second on-table item, which is item 14 this evening, concerns the Metro Vancouver Transportation and Transit Plebiscite. Staff recommendation is that Council support the 0.5% regional sales tax as the funding mechanism for the plan and endorse a yes vote in the upcoming Metro Transportation and Transit Plebiscite.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Morrison. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Let's move forward with that.
Your Worship, that's the last formal item on this agenda.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor O'Neill to adjourn. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Are there any questions from the audience on tonight's agenda? Any of the items on tonight's meeting? Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you all for coming.